Hey everyone, today I'm with Nick LeDonne, independent animator and director of short films. So could you introduce yourself in a few words just for the audience to know who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, totally. Independent animator, I think would sum me up well. I have two shorts that are coming out now. So I made Hanging back in 2016, and then this new short that just finished is Dear Dad. Should be coming out to film festivals within like the next year, and then a third reaching out. So I'm an indie animator. I teach, and I just love animation essentially.
I know that you talk about like tough subjects and that
Yeah,
it was helping people to deal with their issues and everything. So
Yeah, I talk about a lot of sad things. Like it's funny, like when I have students, when I teach, like the first thing I say is like, don't Google my films because they're all sad. Hanging deals with depression. So like pretty up there. Like in 2014, I nearly attempted suicide. I was a college student and I nearly hung myself in my college dorm room. And 2 years after that, I wanted to make a film that would kind of reflect that and hopefully take the negatives that I had and help someone else. So I thought animation was kind of the perfect mix because like I'm a complete wimp. If I see blood or a needle, I pass out on command. So animation is a good way to kind of view traumatic experiences, but it's potent and it's powerful, but it's not realistic, which is good. So I found that animation has been a good way to kind of talk about, depression, suicide, family deaths, and like a lot of tough experiences that I've personally had, and use that to help people talk about issues, to talk about depression, to talk about suicide.
and so did you learn animation before making these short films, or you wanted to tell your stories through animation, so you had to learn
Yeah,
at this point?
yeah. So it was really, I never thought of being a short filmmaker. I started animation in high school and I had some like intro classes and a lot of like hand drawn stuff. And then I actually started school at Ringling College as a freshman and I was in their computer animation program. So it was all Maya and CG. And about 3 semesters after that didn't go too well, hence the first film I made. And I ended up dropping out of the school and I came back home to Philadelphia and I went to UArts and I continued to make hand-drawn films and short films. But at UArts, they had a lot more of a short film emphasis. So every year you had to make a film. Where at Ringling, you only had to make one thesis film at the end of the year. So at first I was like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to make short films, and who wants to do this stuff? And I think I had nothing else to say except for the experience with suicide, and it just clicked from there. And I started to piece together, that I can be a short filmmaker, and especially once I found TVPaint, I can have everything I need as far as a company and a studio and software, right on my laptop and be able to make bigger productions like that. But I never expected to be a shorts maker.
Yeah, I guess it's there is two type of person, like the one who wants to do animation like from childhood and everything,
Yeah.
and then the just something happens and have to tell this with animation. So yeah, it's pretty cool to have the story. Yeah.
Yeah. I was totally that first dude where I was just like, I want to be an animator. I hate every other part of this section. I want like my orders from a director, get the script, get the board, animate one section, pass it off to the pipeline. And then just something switched and now I can't go back. I'm cursed, essentially.
And so yeah, you're talking about using TV Paint to make your film, but for
Yeah.
hanging, it was made on paper. If I
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, it was
how did you make it like with paper like in 2014?
uh
Was it a
it
choice or?
it I mean I guess I sucked at drawing on a tablet. I'm actually holding my pen now, but drawing with this thing felt like I was drawing with like a wet banana. Like it just was not working whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I was really hesitant, like how do I make an entire, I think it was like a 5 minute film when I'm using a wet banana. So it was kind of like the first instinct was like, I know how to use paper, I know how to use traditional animation, and I'll just go with that. And there was so many layers in it. I think I only had about 4 or 5 months to make the film, and it took about like 6,000 drawings. And like I had like this, I don't want to curse, but like this big stack of drawings. I got paper cuts. There's like blood on some of the images. I had to scan each one of them, and I had like this really out of date scanner. So it was like this thing that took like 5 minutes to go back and forth. So it just took forever to make, but it felt comfortable for me at the time. And same with the style. Like it was actually made with charcoal and pencil. So like there's all this fog moving around in the film, and the fog is actually like smudges of vine charcoal on a piece of paper, which also sucked because if I moved the paper up, everything fell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't the best idea. I think it was cool thought process, and as soon as I started doing it, I'm like, this was not as practical as I thought. But it got the job done. So I feel like it's a weird age for animation, and I think I would have grew up in like the 20s or something. It's like everyone's using paper and whatnot. So I feel like today you want to at least use it once, just so you could say like you're old or something. Um, but yeah, just like trying to use some traditional stuff nowadays is always good.
And making this with TV Paint is like the transition from making it like on paper, but with
Yeah.
digital. So what was your thinking process when you transitioned from paper to digital animation from for your second film?
I know before when I was still living in Florida, when I was at Ringling before I left, I was looking at different studios. I wanted to have an internship, and I reached out to Premise Entertainment, who did they helped Aaron Blaze on the Bear and the Hare,
Okay, yeah,
and
cool.
I got to talk with their head. It was Dom Carolla, I think I pronounced his last name. I might get it wrong, but he just walked me in and he talked with me and gave me some advice, and I was like, I was doing 3D animation, I loved paper. And he was like this old, he worked at Disney and did like Lilo and Stitch in the Florida studio. And he was telling me that there's a little bit of paper animation left, but like everything's now on TV Paint. He said specifically like try to learn TV Paint because it's so much faster. And he mentioned like the process of scanning your drawings and waiting all that time to kind of see it versus just like drawing and hitting play and like
Yeah.
seeing it in 2 seconds. And I knew that the school at UArts, they had TV Paint, and I was thinking about it when I made Hanging, and I wasn't sure, and I was like, all right, well, for this new film, I need to move faster, essentially. So I'm like, let me try TV Paint. And it was like as soon as I got the hang of the drawing, and even using the keys, like the period, comma, and it feels like you're flipping the images. And that helped me so much because it resembled 2D animation and paper flipping and rolling. But being able just to hit play and see your work was perfect. And even like working in layers and being able to like downgrade the opacity. When I was making Hanging on paper, if I wanted to kind of like make a new layer, I would actually just take every frame. It would be like a whole day's process where I take 600 papers and I just like erase them all just a little bit so I could try to like get something new drawing wise. If not, get a completely new piece of paper and restart. So the ease of just like making a new layer and getting more detail in there just helped so much. And even I found like a really great process of finding arcs through my scenes. So for like a couple shots, if I wanted to like really pin down like the pupils or the eyes, I would just like every single frame like just advance like 600 frames, but like boom, 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 and just keep it like each frame just hitting the eyes. So just everything about what I was doing was easier. It was faster, and like it makes Hanging look like a big turd basically, like the new film I've made. So the process of it just really I think helped everything that I was doing.
And so for the second film and also the other ones, you work on your own, or you have some partners? Only on
I'm
your own?
solo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean Hanging was a student film. So I had like, faculty support as far as critiques and whatnot, but animation wise it was all solo. This new film, I got the concept the last couple of months before I graduated, but it's been completely solo, and now that I've finished it, I've just kind of been passing around for some critiques, but all the animation is done by myself, the coloring, the lighting. Sometimes if there is sound, like the sound in Hanging, I did it myself too.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I like being able to say that I have a hand on every single part of it, if that makes sense. Like it's all me. It's emotional,
Yeah,
but
I have the same kind of feeling about I want to control and make it right,
yeah.
like I want. Yeah.
Yeah, I have major OCD with it. I can't. I'm like, the people moved for 1 second. I gotta fix it.
And yes, so the second film, it's basically how I discovered you because I just was typing TV Paint on Vimeo. So
Yeah.
and I find the Dear Dad trailer, so that's how we just met. And
Yeah.
so how this is a finished film now? It's finished already?
Yeah. I'm finished it. I'm passing around. I'm doing something interesting with the sound in that I'm trying to tell the entire story without using any sound. So
Okay.
it's kind of like a weird, controversial idea. It's about 3 minutes, and it basically has like one. small 5-second sound effect at the very end. So I'm passing around to people. I'm getting mixed reviews. So I might change that up a little bit, but it's pretty much done. Like the story's done. I'm just kind of like getting final critiques on the sound.
Okay. So you mean like the entire movie has no sound
It's
effect or
silent.
voice? Okay.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
about
it's
the
interesting.
memory and everything, or?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like when I was a student, I was always told like the hardest or the best thing to do is like if you're getting your demo reel reviewed, turn off the sound and see if things
Yeah.
read. So I was like, try to do that with a film, like just turn off the sound and try to tell it with like color, sound, or color, lighting, editing, pantomime. But it's very like the film kind of just like smacks you in the face. Like it's because it's so bleak and it's about death essentially. So it's a cold, bleak film about losing someone. So
Yeah.
it's just an interesting reaction I'm getting. But I kind of like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
But it's essentially done.
I think it's an interesting idea, but it could be like pretty disturbing for audience if you don't see sound.
Yeah,
It's like, is that a problem with mixing or something, you know? So maybe
that's what
having
they're
like
saying.
I'm giving some ideas, I don't know, but
Go ahead.
if you have a short film with a story beginning with sound and then there is no sound from like the 2 other minutes and just something at the end, now you understand the cycle of it, you know?
Yeah.
But
No,
I think
definitely.
it would be disturbing if no sound, but if it's what you want to have as a feeling, so
Yeah.
it could be
No,
great
no,
too. Mhm.
definitely. That's where I'm like, how much sound is enough that they know that it's not there, but then enough to take it away. So it's a little bit of a debate. But yeah.
Yeah. And so, how long did you work on the production, like from the idea to the final?
So I got the idea February of 2017,
Hmm.
and I developed the animation up until like June of 2017. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to finish this film. It'll probably get done in December 2017. And then in the summer, I got invited into this program in New York. There's this indie film theater called the Jacob Burns Film Center. And they had this new program called Creative Culture, and they were inviting like a small group of like 8 emerging directors to make short films. So I ended up getting into that. So once the summer hit, I was actually making a new short film called Reaching Out, which is also being done in TVPaint.
Hmm.
It's an LGBT themed film, but I stopped everything what I was doing with Dear Dad, put that on hold. It was halfway done, and just started making this completely new animated film. I put that on hold in 2018, so just at the start of 2018, and switched back to Dear Dad, finished that in the summer, and now I'm going back with Reaching Out. So it was kind of weird because I was working on it, I stopped everything I was doing, started the new film, stopped that one, and then jumped back to the other one.
Yeah.
So I was kind of making two at the same time, but it was about like a year and a half time, and I was kind of like on and off juggling it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and this is two completely different stories. So, how do you deal with
Yeah.
like keeping the vision you want to have and switching through production like this? Is it
Eh,
hard to do? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's because the other film's also sad, and at the time, like I was still screening, like hanging is still bouncing around. So it's like suicide, family deaths, and like a third special sad topic on LGBT issues. So it was hard to one just be in that emotional state for such a long time as you're making the films. Like every time I'm making the Dear Dad film, I'm always thinking about my dad and what it was like to lose him. When I was making Hanging, I was thinking about suicide and things that led up to it. So it's weird that you're in such a negative spot, and then just to switch it with a different trauma is just not the best thing. So as soon as I made the switch from Reaching Out to Dear Dad, like when I picked it back up in 2018, there was a big like month where I was just like, shit. I was just like waiting to kind of get into it, and I was like looking at the film and I was looking at the files. I was like, okay, this is the film, and getting like back into the mindset. But it wasn't like a smooth like just drop everything and next day go into it. I was just like, oh boy, going to the next one, and kind of weeding myself back into it. So like that's what I'm doing now, going from Dear Dad back to Reaching Out. I'm just like, all right, this is the next film, and just trying to get myself geared for it.
Because
No,
you seem to have like been through many problems like a few years ago, but
yeah.
now you seem really happy. So how do you deal with
Well,
making sad stories but being happy at the same time? You know, if,
well, I think it's also like as soon as I'm not making the film, I'm happy. You got to think. So it's like it's kind of like anything but that. Um, but I think like when I made hanging, about a year ago, I had attempted suicide, and literally like right when I started making hanging, as soon as I started, the next week my dad had a heart attack. So it was like making a film on suicide as you're just losing your parent, and I think I was just like it was just like rock bottom for me. Like we ended up, my family lost their house, and we were moving. Like there was one part of the film where I was animating it, I didn't have a place to animate it, so I took all my drawings to McDonald's, and I was sitting there coloring drawings in McDonald's. But I think because I was just at rock bottom and I was at such a bad place, I thought it can't get worse, and the only thing I'm looking at is up, like to a better time when you're happy, you're having more fun. And as I started to make more and more films on trauma, like when I was finishing Hanging and I was doing Dear Dad and I was doing this new one, I thought, well, it's not getting any worse. So I mean, if I just stay down here, I know as soon as I get done all these films, it's all behind me essentially. So I think just realizing that the worst is behind me, and especially I think what helps is knowing how much it helps someone else. Like I know like some of the preview screenings I've had with Dear Dad, like some people have just walked out of the room crying, and they said like how much it made them feel and how emotional it was. There was a couple people, we'll get a handful of people that with Hanging when they saw that, like there was one person, she said she Googled ways to hang herself. And she found my film, and she just wanted to thank me because it stopped her from doing it. So like things like that, where I know like it might just be like one or two people, but if my issues and my artwork have helped someone, I know it's for a purpose. So I think knowing the people that I might be able to help helps me kind of get through the films and get through the work.
Yeah, it's great to see like what a story and the film and animation can have such a emotional power on people.
Yeah, like because it's literally just my drawings, and I see it from the whole spot to where it's like an ugly scribble, and I'm like who the hell is gonna want to see this? And then they get put together, and then it makes someone cry. So it's a weird thing that like just a drawing or an image can give some kind of emotional beat to someone.
To go to the process itself, how do you proceed? Do you have like a proper script, and then you make a storyboard animatic like the normal way, or do you have some organic way to do this because you're alone, so you don't have anyone to convince, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, like that's the way I should make a film, right? Like script, animatic, character design, storyboard, and the whole shebang. I'm always crunched for time, so it's always like I'm gonna make a film in like a year or 6 months, but it's always rushed essentially. So the way I describe it is like if you're on the top of a hill and you just get pushed off and you're tumbling down the hill and you're just grabbing shit as you go along and you finally make like the exit. I feel like a truck falling off the side of a hill as it explodes on fire and just keeps going, but it finds the finish line.
Yeah.
So with Dear Dad, I had like the shittiest storyboard you could ever think of. Like it was a big piece of garbage. And I started animating, and like I had character designs, but they weren't fantastic. So like sometimes the character was on model, off model. And at some point, like I could actually show you a little bit later, but I had like the first cut of it, like the trailer of it. And I was looking at it and I'm like, this sucks. Like it just looks awful. Like the color and the drawings were bad. But like I was like, I love the story, and like the editing was there, and like the positions and the camera, but everything just looked awful. And I was like, I know it could be good, but I'm just like, I gotta color this thing, and I was trying to find a process for that. But I knew like the story was there and it was really emotional. It was making some people cry. So that's when I started to jump into the animation bit. Like I have here, like this is just a little bit of the layout. But this is just like a blurb from the film. When the son and dad are yelling, and basically it's a huge fight and confrontation. But once I had like the line work in there, I just like layer by layer in TVPaint just kept adding things. So thinking about, all right, well I have the shadows and the reflecting lights, and yeah, this is when I started to mask the shadows out and thinking about like all the highlights in there. And I thought, all right, well the first part of the highlights are done. And I just kept adding it and getting more contrast and thinking of ideas, and it really became something where I was like, oh, this looks cool. Like I think at this point I was making like these self ink lines, and I was like, it'd be really cool if I had like something little bit underneath the nose, or like a little line down here. And if I liked it, I would just apply it to the whole film. And even stuff like all these little lines, here, like I was just doing these white little dashes, but then I would blur each one with the pencil, like the eraser.
Okay.
So I was literally just like, how do I make each drawing cool, and then just keep adding to it essentially.
And it's pretty
Uh,
interesting because we can see like we talked about the sound, and
yeah,
when I saw the trailer, my head was full of sound. You know, the screaming and
yeah,
the fork in the meat and everything. So it implies sound like
the
within people's
trailer.
head.
Yeah,
So it's pretty interesting to know that there will be no sound actually.
yeah, yeah. It's because it's all about like not being able to speak. Like the way that I lost my dad, like there was a lot of guilt involved. So it's about like not being able to communicate, and especially like after someone's passed, like not being able to say goodbye or to say you're sorry.
Yeah.
Like I think this is just another clip from the film, and same like these parts would be silent, but like you kind of see how the film goes wrong. But like for parts like this, when I was making it, let me pop over here. Yeah, like this is me in TV Paint. I just took a screen cap, but like
Hmm.
literally, I would just think of these cool lines. Like this was like underneath the upper eyelid. I just wanted like a slightly darker line, and I just every frame just penciled it in. So a lot of it, I was just thinking like, how can I just hand paint this, or just kind of get to the next level, or what would be cool to add? And a lot of this stuff, like I know like people will probably never see, but I was just like, how can I get like every little light, the freckles, like little shines in his eye that would hopefully make it pop. But at the rate it goes, like the general person would never see this kind of stuff. This was the scene where the boy's about to leave the house, and to make the eyes a little bit glossier, I was like, oh, it would be nice if there was a little white line underneath the pop. But like again, it was just that ability in TV Paint. Like it was great that I could just go frame by frame to every single image just really quickly, just using like the arrow keys, just back and forth. And I would just do a pass over essentially just everything. So I would do like a little pass for the nose line, and just try to like detail every little section of this guy that I could.
And about animation itself, do you work with some I don't know video references, or you just go ahead and make the animation?
I actually just go ahead and usually I'm straight ahead,
Hmm.
but I'll just kind of feel how the acting should be, and then I'll kind of base it off of that, and then usually like I just need like a in between or two, like after I straight ahead do it. But usually it's just off my head, and I'm just thinking of the emotions of the acting part of it.
Okay.
This is from the end of the scene, so again like it's silent, so you don't hear the son's words, and he's like starting to speak, and when I was animating this part, it's from the father's funeral. So it's the son, and what I was trying to convey was like there was a harsher tone to how the son speaks. So like in the beginning, you see the son really happy, and as the fight goes on with the dad, you see things getting worse and worse. And at this part, like I was trying to have the character really looking like he was struggling to speak. And I was trying to do everything like even in this part, I was animating like, the tears coming off his face. I think this is also all the layers I was doing. So
Oh.
like under the hood of this was just like a hot mess of just like everything I could find, from doing like these overlighting, like these top white lights, the highlights, underlights. I kept adding more and more into there. Yeah, so I outlined all the layers, had like the color fill in, and then just popped up layer by layer. And even some of these, like I exported um, as single layers, and then because like as I adjusted the film, like I changed the saturation a lot.
Mhm.
So sometimes the whites wouldn't pop, so I would kind of just pull out the layer of a white or something like that, like the little highlights, and just have it as like a transparent video, and then frame that over. I was just really trying to just put as much of the detail into like the really small, um, you know, little things that no one would kind of see, but just trying to get like every little thing. Like you might catch one of these tears, but like the small things that I feel people would probably just miss. I wasn't sure if this was like the proper way to do it. Like I was actually self-taught on TV Paint.
Mhm.
Like my school had it, but they never had like official classes on it. Um, but my thought was just like just how to add as much detail in there as possible, and every single scene has like this crazy amount of layers in there. And I found like what was really helpful as I was working was to just be able to highlight specific areas. So like if I was doing like the nose or something like that as I came in. Yeah, but I think this is just one of the scenes. But like when I'm working in TV Paint, my cleanup process is like I'll just clean up every single one of the noses all throughout the scene, and then go back and clean up like just specific parts. So like I'm really big with the pupils. So before anything else gets cleaned up, I'll just make sure all the pupils are like in some kind of nice line or pattern. And then I usually go through the tips of the eyebrows, so like making sure all those are moving through the same one. But it was a really nice change from traditional animation where I didn't have that ability to go through, every single piece of paper, every image, and make sure that all these little lines are following each other. With TVPaint, it was nice that it allowed me to just kind of take these big passes. Like, I think doing these freckles would have been like a pain in the butt without TVPaint because
so.
it would be hard to go through every image when you're putting it back on the pegs. So being able to just do like these big runs through like the entire body it was really helpful when I was working.
And so are you focusing more on the eyes and the look and everything because the expression is like the main engine for the animation you want to share, I guess? Like having the proper eyebrows and everything. So
yeah, I was especially because with the plane I'm not hearing the characters talk like that. You wouldn't hear any wording. I was big into like trying to over exaggerate their facial expressions. That way, like people can read it without actually knowing what they're saying and getting the emotions and getting like this is the big finale or this is the angry moment or they're giving up or he's sad. So making sure all that read. Just the expressions and also like the body language, just making sure that's sold. Yeah, it's just some clips from what I was working with for my new film, Reaching Out, which is also in TVPaint, but it has more of like an ink wash quality. But you can kind of see like this is just rough animation, but like whenever I'm cleaning up stuff, like I'll try to just grab like a single pass throughout the entire section. So I'll just like clean up all the bottoms of the noses and kind of move forward. So I just kind of feel like it helps me keep track of things, but the film's interesting because it deals with coming out, and a lot of the film was just shown through small scenes of the hands, especially like with like in the gay community how hard it is to hold your partner's hand in public. So a lot of the film deals with like showing like hand animation, like how hesitant you are in public, or what does it feel like to open up and finally grab your partner's hand. So it's interesting that a lot of the body language is shown through that. And, finally at the end of the film, the character can come out and, connects with someone and has like a first kiss essentially. But that was kind of the goal for the new film, to have more of like a ink wash style and show a lot of the emotions just through like hand acting and also characters. But, how much can I show with just hand expressions?
Does your TVPaint animation process evolve from Dear Dad to the other film? Like the way you work and everything? I
feel like Dear Dad, I just learned a lot of new concepts and kind of what not to do. So I know specifically like TVPaint has like a lot of new brushes that I didn't know about. Like realistically, I could actually do like a lot of things. I feel like editing wise, I didn't know about TVPaint. Like I believe that there's some watercolor brushes there, right?
Yeah, by default,
yeah,
and
like,
then you can also make yours and everything.
Yeah, like that was going to help me so much because at first I was thinking like, oh, well, again, like I was just getting into TVPaint and my first thought was if I do all the line animation with TVPaint, get the line quality good, I'm like, well, I could print out all the drawings and then put watercolor on top of them. And as soon as like someone was like, you can just use watercolor brushes, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because the entire film is going to have like this more ink wash quality to it. So I think kind of like using more of those new brushes is going to help me a lot. And again, just like help speed up my process with it. I think like I have a much better lay of the land. Like I was still getting in like I'm much quicker as I'm animating, like spinning the camera around and moving keys around, and even just kind of knowing like the layering process as kind of like how to work that better. Yeah. It's a dense program. Like I'm surprised by how many tools it has in there. Like at first I'm like, all right, just it has like the traditional animation aspect as far as the lines, but it's surprising. Like each time I go into it, I feel like I learned something new about it essentially.
Yeah, and I guess there is many tools, and some people just focus on some tools because they only do colors or animation. But it's better made for like people like you who wants to make a film solo only with one software, I guess.
Yeah, it has like the full package to it. Yeah, so my goal is to kind of like just jump more into this and start getting out, lessening other software that way. Like this could just be my plain. Because even like you can just import sound effects too. So if the whole production's made in this, it just makes my life easier. It's nice because it's so mobile. Like I have my laptop, I have my Cintiq, and I can really just go anywhere I need to. And I have a production studio essentially. Yeah, and especially like the whole page of tutorials that you guys have is really helpful too. Like I remember the first time I really knew about TVPaint was when you guys made that short film. I think it looked like watercolor, but it was like a little girl and she was painting.
Yeah, Journey Through Creativity.
I remember I saw that in college, and I think I was at Ringling at the time, so everyone's doing 3D animation, and we saw that and we're like, oh God, we went into the wrong major. Like we should go back into 2D stuff. So it was really exciting at the time to see that.
Maybe do you have some advice to people who wants to make a film and don't know how to do, or something like motivating, you know?
Yeah. Advice for people that want to make their own short films and try to like get into that mindset.
Yeah,
Like
it.
how do you, I think just like tell stories that are from the heart. Like I think I feel like I can't not make the films that I make just because they're so personal. Like when I was working on Dear Dad, because it's connected to my family, I'm like, I can't stop working on it, or I can't make it. I can't just like finish it or drop it away. Like I need to finish it because I was so invested in the story. So I think if you really want to, make your own shorts, I think if you find a story that's personal to you, that you're really committed and investing in, it's like you can't not tell that story essentially. And I think that's what's got me. Like I know I'm reaching out, and I have a fourth film, Roberta, that I want to make. That's like a personal character of mine. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm so invested in the stories that I can't, like I just can't not do it. Like when other things come into my life, or when I can't find the time, I'm just like, I need to get these stories out and to finish them. So I think if you're invested in it, you'll just kind of do it yourself.
Cool. And where can we see Dear Dad short film? When it will be online?
I actually want to put it online either this Father's Day or next Father's Day, depending on how film festivals go. So let it screen for a little bit, but try to make it as like a Father's Day gift online, and hopefully after viewing the film, like you want to go out to your family or a parent and just be able to have like the conversation to talk to them again, essentially.